She mocked my house, so I bought her dream home and raised the rent. Have you ever been judged for something you were proud of? For me, it was my home. And what happened next, you won't believe. I'm Jack, and if you don't want to miss out on more shocking stories, hit like, subscribe, and turn on all notifications right now. Also, let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from. I might just give you a shout out in the next video. I never thought a simple housewarming party would change the way I looked at my own home or at myself. But that's exactly what happened the night Clara came over. Clara, with her perfect hair, her designer shoes, and her way of making everyone feel just a little bit smaller. She was the kind of neighbor who always had something to say, and it was rarely kind. My house wasn't much, I'll admit. It was a small, two-bedroom place on the edge of town, with peeling paint and a yard that needed more attention than I could give. But it was mine. I worked hard for it, saved every penny, and when I finally signed the papers, I felt like I'd climbed a mountain. It wasn't fancy, but it was home. That night, I'd invited a few neighbors over to celebrate. I'd baked cookies, cleaned every corner, and even bought fresh flowers for the table. I wanted everything to be perfect. But as soon as Clara walked in, I could feel her eyes scanning every detail, searching for something to criticize. She didn't disappoint. "Oh, this is cozy," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "I guess it's true what they say. Small spaces are easier to clean." A few people laughed, but I could feel my cheeks burning. I tried to brush it off, but Clara wasn't done. She wandered from room to room, making little comments about the outdated fixtures, the worn carpet, the mismatched furniture. Every word felt like a tiny pinprick. When she finally left, I sat on my couch and stared at the walls. For the first time, I saw my home the way she did, small, shabby, not good enough. I hated that she'd gotten under my skin. I hated that I cared what she thought. But most of all, I hated feeling powerless. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let Clara's words define me or my home. If she wanted to play games, I'd play too. But I'd play to win. The next morning, I started looking at real estate listings. Not because I wanted to move, but because I wanted to understand what made a house good enough in Clara's eyes. I scrolled through photos of gleaming kitchens, sparkling bathrooms, and perfectly manicured lawns. And then I saw it, Clara's house. Or rather, the house she'd been renting for years, the one she always bragged about. It was beautiful, I'll give her that. 3 stories, big windows, a wraparound porch. It was the kind of place you saw in magazines. And according to the listing, it was for sale. I couldn't believe it. Clara had always acted like she owned the place, but she was just a tenant. The owner was moving out of state and wanted a quick sale. The price was high, but not impossible. I did the math, checked my savings, and realized that with a little help from the bank, I could actually buy it. The idea was wild. Crazy even. But the more I thought about it, the more I liked it. What better way to show Clara that I wasn't the person she thought I was? What better way to take back my power? I called the real estate agent that afternoon. We set up a viewing for the next day. I barely slept that night, my mind racing with possibilities. What if I actually pulled this off? What would Clara say then? The house was even more beautiful in person. Sunlight streamed through the windows, casting warm patterns on the hardwood floors. The kitchen was huge, with marble countertops and stainless steel appliances. Every room was filled with light and space and possibility. I walked through the rooms, imagining what it would be like to own a place like this, to be the one in control, to have the upper hand for once. The agent told me there were other interested buyers, but I didn't care. I made an offer on the spot. It was a little below asking price, but still generous. The owner accepted the next day. Just like that, I was the owner of Clara's dream home. I didn't tell anyone at first. I wanted to savor the secret, to enjoy the feeling of having turned the tables. But I couldn't resist checking in on Clara. I drove by the house a few times, watching her come and go, completely unaware that everything was about to change. A few weeks later, the lease renewal notice went out. I raised the rent, not by much, just enough to make a point. Clara was furious. She called the landlord, demanding an explanation. That's when she found out the house had been sold. She called me next, her voice shaking with anger. "Did you know the new owner raised my rent?" she snapped. I smiled, even though she couldn't see me. "Yes, Clara, I did." There was a long pause. I could almost hear her putting the pieces together. "You bought my house?" she whispered. "My house now," I said, keeping my voice calm. Funny how things work out, isn't it? Owning Clara's dream home felt surreal. For days, I kept expecting someone to call and say there'd been a mistake, that the house wasn't really mine. But every time I held those keys, reality hit me all over again. I was the owner now. The power had shifted, and for the first time, I felt like I was in control of my own story. Clara, on the other hand, was not taking it well. She tried to act unfazed at first, pretending the rent increase was just a minor inconvenience. But I could see the cracks in her perfect facade. She started avoiding me at neighborhood gatherings, her usual smug smile replaced by tight-lipped silence. Word spread quickly. People whispered about how the tables had turned, how the queen of the block was suddenly at someone else's mercy. I'll admit, a part of me enjoyed it. After years of feeling small, it was satisfying to see Clara squirm. But I also knew I had to be careful. I didn't want to become the kind of person who thrived on someone else's misery. I want to prove a point, not start a war. Still, Clara didn't make it easy. She sent me long, angry emails about the rent, demanding I reconsider. She complained about every little thing, the water pressure, the heating, even the color of the mailbox. Each message was more dramatic than the last, as if she thought she could wear me down with sheer persistence. I stood my ground. I responded politely, reminding her that the rent was fair and the house was in excellent condition. I even offered to fix a few minor issues, just to show I wasn't out to get her. But Clara wasn't interested in solutions. She wanted control, and she hated that she'd lost it. Meanwhile, I started to notice something interesting. Other neighbors, who had always kept their distance, began reaching out to me. They congratulated me on the purchase, shared their own stories about Clara's behavior, and even invited me over for coffee. It was like a secret club of people who had all been on the receiving end of her sharp tongue. One evening, I found myself sitting on my porch with Mrs. Patel from next door. She was a kind woman, always quick with a smile and a plate of homemade samosas. As we sipped tea, she leaned in and said, "You know, Jack, people like Clara only have power if you let them. You did the right thing." Her words stuck with me. For so long, I let Clara's opinions shape how I saw myself. But now, I realized that her approval or disapproval didn't define me. I was finally free to live on my own terms. But Clara wasn't done yet. A few weeks after the rent increase, she started a campaign to turn the neighborhood against me. She spread rumors, telling anyone who would listen that I was a greedy landlord, that I'd bought the house just to make her life miserable. She even tried to organize a petition to lower the rent, but no one signed it. People were tired of her drama, and for once, they saw through her act. Still, the tension was hard to ignore. Every time I walked down the street, I could feel Clara's eyes on me, burning with resentment. She stopped speaking to me entirely, which was honestly a relief. But I knew she was plotting something. Clara was never one to accept defeat gracefully. Then, one afternoon, I got a call from my property manager. Clara had given notice she was moving out at the end of the month. I was stunned. I'd expected her to fight tooth and nail to stay, but instead, she was leaving without a word. When moving day came, I watched from my window as Clara loaded her belongings into a moving van. She didn't look back once. The house that had been her pride and joy was now just another stop on her journey. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. After she left, I walked through the empty rooms, taking in the silence. It was strange to think that this place, which had once been the center of so much drama, was now mine to shape as I pleased. I could rent it out to someone new, or maybe even move in myself. The possibilities were endless. But more than anything, I felt a sense of closure. Clara's words no longer had power over me. I'd taken control of my own story, and in doing so, I'd found a confidence I never knew I had. As the sun set behind the house, I stood on the porch and took a deep breath. The air felt lighter, the world a little brighter. For the first time in a long time, I was excited about the future. But little did I know, Clara's departure was just the beginning of a new chapter, one that would test me in ways I never expected. After Clara moved out, the house felt different. The energy shifted, as if the walls themselves were relieved to be free of her constant complaints. I took a few days to let it all sink in, then got to work preparing the place for a new tenant. I wanted to make sure everything was perfect, not just to attract the right renter, but to prove to myself that I could be a responsible, fair landlord. I repainted the living room a warm, inviting color. I fixed the leaky faucet in the kitchen and replaced the old, squeaky door hinges. Every improvement felt like a small victory, a way to reclaim the house from Clara's negativity. By the time I was done, the place looked better than ever. I listed the house online, and within days, I had several interested applicants. I met with each one, determined to find someone who would appreciate the home for what it was. After a few interviews, I settled on a young couple, Sarah and Mike, who were expecting their first child. They were kind, respectful, and genuinely excited about making the house their own. When they moved in, I felt a sense of pride I hadn't experienced before. Seeing them decorate the porch with potted plants and hearing laughter through the open windows made me realize how much a home's energy could change with the right people. The house that had once been a symbol of Clara's superiority was now a place of new beginnings. But just as I was settling into this new chapter, I started noticing strange things happening around the neighborhood. It began with small, petty acts, trash cans knocked over, mailboxes dented, garden gnomes mysteriously disappearing. At first, I thought it was just kids being mischievous, but then I heard from Mrs. Patel that Clara had been seen driving by late at night, her car idling at the end of the street. Rumors started swirling. Some neighbors claimed they'd seen Clara talking to the new tenants, warning them about me. Others said she was spreading stories online, painting me as a ruthless landlord who'd forced her out of her dream home. I tried to ignore it, but the whispers were hard to escape. One evening, Sarah knocked on my door, looking uneasy. "Jack, can I talk to you for a minute?" she asked. "Of course," I replied, inviting her in. She hesitated before speaking. "I don't want to make a big deal out of this, but someone's been leaving notes on our doorstep. They're not very nice. They say things like, 'Be careful who you trust,' and 'This house has a bad history.' Do you know anything about it?" My heart sank. I knew immediately who was behind it. Clara couldn't let go, even after moving on. I reassured Sarah and promised to keep an eye out for anything suspicious. I also installed a security camera near the front door, just in case. The next few weeks were tense. Every time I saw a car I didn't recognize, I wondered if it was Clara. Every time the doorbell rang, I braced myself for more drama. But through it all, I refused to let her win. I focused on being the best landlord I could be, checking in with Sarah and Mike regularly, making sure they felt safe and supported. Slowly, the neighborhood began to heal. The petty acts of vandalism stopped, and the rumors faded away. People started to see me not as the villain in Clara's story, but as someone who had stood up for himself and come out stronger on the other side. One Saturday, as I was mowing my lawn, Mrs. Patel waved me over. "Jack, I just wanted to say how proud we all are of you," she said. "You handled everything with grace. Not everyone could have done what you did." Her words meant more to me than she knew. For so long, I'd let other people's opinions shape my self-worth. Now, I realized that true confidence came from within, from knowing who you are and standing by your choices, no matter what others say. As summer turned to fall, life in the neighborhood settled into a comfortable rhythm. Sarah and Mike welcomed their baby, and I found myself invited to more gatherings than ever before. The house that had once been a source of stress was now a place of laughter and community. But just when I thought the past was finally behind me, I received an unexpected letter in the mail. It was from Clara. The envelope was thick, the handwriting unmistakably hers, elegant, looping, and just a little too perfect. I hesitated before opening it, unsure of what to expect. Inside was a long, handwritten note. "Jack," it began, "I suppose you think you've won. Maybe you have, but I want you to know that you didn't just buy a house. You took something from me that I can never get back. I hope you're happy." There was no apology, no acknowledgement of her own actions, just bitterness and blame. I read the letter twice, then set it aside. For the first time, I felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, just a quiet sense of closure. I realized then that Clara's opinion no longer mattered. I had my home, my peace, and a community that respected me for who I was. The power she once held over me was gone, replaced by something far more valuable: self-respect. As I watched the sun set over the neighborhood, I knew that this chapter of my life was finally over. But I also knew that every ending is just the start of something new. The weeks after Clara's letter felt strangely peaceful. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't looking over my shoulder or waiting for the next bit of drama to unfold. The house, the neighborhood, and even my own mind felt lighter. I spent more time outside, tending to the garden, chatting with neighbors, and enjoying the simple pleasure of a quiet evening on the porch. One afternoon, as I was planting new flowers along the walkway, Mike came over with his baby daughter in his arms. "Jack, I just wanted to say thanks again for everything," he said, smiling. "We really feel a home here. It's hard to believe how much this place has changed in just a few months." His words made me pause. I looked around at the freshly painted fence, the blooming flowers, and the laughter drifting from Sarah and Mrs. Patel, who were sharing recipes on the porch. The house that had once been a battleground was now a sanctuary, not just for me, but for everyone who lived here. But as much as I wanted to leave the past behind, Clara's letter lingered in my thoughts. Not because of what she said, but because of what it represented: a final attempt to hold on to something she'd already lost. I realized that, in her own way, Clara was as trapped by her need for control as I had once been by my need for approval. That realization changed something in me. I stopped seeing Clara as a villain and started seeing her as a person, flawed, insecure, and maybe even a little bit lost. It didn't excuse her actions, but it did help me let go of the last bit of resentment I'd been carrying. With that weight lifted, I found myself looking forward to the future. I started making plans, not just for the house, but for my own life. I signed up for a cooking class at the community center, something I'd always wanted to do, but never had the confidence to try. I reconnected with old friends, invited them over for dinner, and even started dating again. The more I opened myself up to new experiences, the more I realized how much I'd been holding myself back. For years, I let other people's opinions dictate my choices. Now I was finally living for myself. One evening, as I was cleaning up after a small dinner party, I found myself thinking about the journey that had brought me here. It hadn't been easy. There were moments when I wanted to give up, when I doubted myself, when I wondered if it was all worth it. But looking around at the friends gathered in my kitchen, the warmth and laughter filling the air, I knew I wouldn't change a thing. The house had become more than just a place to live. It was a symbol of everything I'd overcome. Every chipped tile and creaky floorboard told a story, not of defeat, but of resilience. I realized that true strength isn't about never falling down. It's about getting back up again and again, no matter how many times life tries to knock you down. As the months passed, the neighborhood continued to thrive. New families moved in, old friendships deepened, and the sense of community grew stronger with each passing day. I became more involved in local events, helping to organize block parties and charity drives. People started coming to me for advice, not just about real estate, but about life. One day, Mrs. Patel stopped by with a plate of her famous samosas. "Jack, you've really made a difference here," she said, her eyes twinkling. "This neighborhood feels like a family now." Her words touched me more than I expected. For so long, I'd felt like an outsider, someone who didn't quite belong. Now, I was part of something bigger, a community built on kindness, respect, and a shared sense of purpose. But even as life moved forward, I never forgot the lessons I'd learned. I knew that challenges would come again, that there would be setbacks and disappointments. But I also knew that I was stronger than I'd ever been, and that I had the support of people who cared about me. One crisp autumn morning, as I sipped coffee on the porch, I saw a moving truck pull up to the house across the street. A new family was arriving, their faces filled with excitement and a hint of nervousness. I remembered how I'd felt when I first moved in, hopeful, anxious, and eager to start a new chapter. I walked over to introduce myself, welcoming them to the neighborhood and offering to help with their boxes. As we chatted, I realized how far I'd come, not just as a homeowner, but as a person. I was no longer defined by the opinions of others. I was confident, capable, and ready for whatever came next. That evening, as the sun set and the sky turned a brilliant shade of orange, I sat on my porch and reflected on everything that had happened. The journey had been long and sometimes painful, but had also been transformative. I'd learned that true happiness doesn't come from impressing others or seeking their approval. It comes from being true to yourself, standing up for what you believe in, and building a life you can be proud of. As the stars appeared overhead, I felt a deep sense of peace. The house was quiet, the neighborhood calm, and my heart full. For the first time in a long time, I was exactly where I was meant to be. Winter arrived quietly, blanketing the neighborhood in a soft layer of snow. The once busy streets grew still, and the houses glowed warmly against the cold. I found myself spending more evenings by the window, watching the world outside slow down, reflecting on how much my own life had changed. One evening, as I sat with a mug of hot chocolate, I received a message from Sarah. She and Mike wanted to invite me over for dinner to celebrate their daughter's first birthday. I smiled, remembering how nervous they'd been when they first moved in and how quickly they'd become part of the neighborhood's fabric. Their invitation felt like a full-circle moment, a reminder of how far we'd all come. At the party, the house was filled with laughter, the kind that echoes off the walls and makes a place feel truly alive. Neighbors mingled, children played, and for a moment, it was easy to forget the struggles that had once defined this home. Sarah handed me a slice of cake and said, "Jack, thank you for believing in us and in this house. You gave us a chance to build something special." Her words stayed with me long after the party ended. I realized that in trying to prove something to Clara, I'd ended up proving something much more important to myself. I'd learned that a home isn't just about bricks and paint or how it looks from the outside. It's about the people who fill it, the memories made within its walls, and the sense of belonging it creates. As the months passed, I continued to invest in the neighborhood, not just financially, but emotionally. I volunteered at the local shelter, helped organize a winter coat drive, and even started a small book club that met in my living room every other week. The connections I made were genuine, built on trust and mutual respect, not competition or one-upmanship. One day, as I was shoveling snow from my walkway, I noticed a familiar car parked at the end of the street. For a moment, my heart skipped a beat. It was Clara. She sat in her car for a while, watching the neighborhood from a distance. I wondered what she was thinking, if she missed her old life, or if she was simply curious about how things had turned out. Eventually, she drove away without ever getting out. I felt a strange mix of relief and sympathy. I hoped she'd found peace wherever she was. I hoped she'd learned, as I had, that happiness can't be built on making others feel small. Spring arrived, bringing with it new life and fresh beginnings. The neighborhood blossomed, gardens flourished, children played in the streets, and the sense of community grew stronger than ever. I found myself looking forward to each new day, eager to see what it would bring. One afternoon, as I was tending to my garden, a young couple walked by, hand in hand. They stopped to admire the flowers and struck up a conversation. "We're thinking of moving here," they said. "Everyone seems so friendly. What's your secret?" I laughed and told them, "There's no secret, just good people, a little kindness, and a willingness to look out for each other. That's what makes a neighborhood feel like home." As they walked away, I realized how much I'd grown. I was no longer the person who needed to prove himself to anyone. I was content, confident, and grateful for the journey that had brought me here. Looking back, I understood that Clara's mockery had been a turning point, not just in my relationship with her, but in my relationship with myself. Her words had stung, but they'd also pushed me to take control of my own story, to stand up for myself, and to build a life I could be proud of. I learned that sometimes the people who try to bring you down are the ones who are struggling the most. And while it's tempting to seek revenge or hold on to anger, true strength comes from letting go, moving forward, and choosing kindness, even when it's hard. As the sun set on another beautiful day, I sat on my porch, surrounded by the sounds of laughter and life. I thought about all the challenges I'd faced, the lessons I'd learned, and the person I'd become. I knew there would be more obstacles ahead, more moments of doubt and difficulty. but I also knew that I was ready for them. Because in the end, it wasn't about the house or the rent or even Clara. It was about finding my own worth, building real connections, and creating a home, not just for myself, but for everyone around me. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on all notifications so you never miss another inspiring story. And let me know in the comments what you would have done in my place. So if you ever find yourself doubting your own value or letting someone else's words define you, remember my story. Remember that you have the power to change your life, to stand up for yourself, and to build something beautiful out of even the most difficult circumstances. And who knows, maybe one day, you'll look back and realize that the very thing that once made you feel small was the spark that helped you grow.